Okay, here we go. This is a video for the world's hardest multiple choice questions. I can't see them being this hard in the exam. I really can't. But I just think if we can do these ones and you actually understand these ones, you're much more likely to do well in the exam. Right, this first one kind of scared me because it had loads and loads of information. It was saying there's rising inflation at home. And there's falling productivity in all sectors of the economy. So we know there is falling productivity. That's the important bit. And it's saying due to a shortage of skilled labour, right? So, what can be concluded from the data? Can A be included? Government should increase taxes to reduce the budget deficit. Not one part of this has anything to do with budget deficit, so that is just stupid, right? B, exporters have been hit harder than importers by rising domestic inflation. I know it talks about inflation in the thing, and it says rising inflation at home, but at no point does it say anything about exporters being hit harder than importers. There's no way we can tell that from the data, so that's wrong. But that's the one I was most tempted by. Question C. The current account position in the balance of payments is improving. Well, if we're getting less competitive, it's probably going to be worse, so that doesn't make any sense. And then D is the right answer, just by crossing out the other ones, but also it's saying output per worker in exporting firms is declining. This is right because productivity is measured by output per worker. Some people say per time period. So it's the worst handwriting ever. I don't care. So the answer is D, because it's basically just saying there's less productivity in the economy, therefore output per worker is going down. So the answer is D. Okay. Right, the second one. It's talking about there being increasing interest rates. All the other stuff doesn't really matter. It's increasing interest rates. This will have the effect of reducing. Now the key word here is reducing. Right, is it going to reduce people's willingness to save? Now if interest rates go up, people are more likely to save because they get more money back. So that is wrong. Is it going to reduce the spending power of people with mortgages? That's the right answer. Because I checked the other day that if interest rates go up by 2%, my mortgage is going to go from 900 quid to about £1,200. And if that happens, the dream's over for Mr. Robinson. I won't be able to buy any biking stuff. I actually don't know what we'll do. So that means if the mortgage rate goes up, we're in trouble. Okay, so if interest rates go up, it would really affect our mortgage. So therefore, our spending power would go down. Right, is it going to affect a firm's costs? No, it's got nothing to do with costs. And is it going to affect the supply of imports? No, it's not. I mean, it's got absolutely no relevance to the supply of imports. So the answer is B. Also, if I was going massive here, you don't need to listen to me here, but when interest rates go up, that can make the pound stronger. You don't really need to know that yet. And that would make imports cheap, which would actually have an effect of increasing the supply of imports. So D is the wrong way around. Right, question number 3. Right, I was a bit worried about this one because I looked at it. But whenever they talk about the aggregate supply curve being its long run, it's not that the long run is not the curvy one. AS like that is showing both the short run, which is like this bit, and the long run. When they talk about the long run AS, it looks like this. It's just a straight line, the long run aggregate supply. And this shows the maximum the country can make. So if the country was at its maximum amount of supply, and AD goes up, so AD was here, but now it goes up, what's going to happen? Is this going to increase real GDP? Now you can see on the graph Y hasn't changed. GDP has not been able to increase because we're already at our capacity. Is it going to cause more jobs? It's not going to, because jobs would be, like cyclical jobs would be caused by an increase in demand. An increase in demand causing firms need to make more stuff. The problem is, firms can't make any more stuff because they're stuck there, so it won't have an effect on that. Is it likely to increase productivity? No, doesn't make any sense. But what it's going to do is, if demand's gone up and we can't buy the stuff in the UK because we've already run out of stuff to make, we're going to have to instead buy imports. So the answer is D. Alright, question number 4. For me, I actually really like these questions, but when I first saw this one, I found it really hard to understand what it was asking. It's saying, which of the following combinations is correct? Right, and we do that usual thing where we check whether which one's correct here, then we go on to this one, then we go on to this one, and when we get 3 ticks for all of them, we know that's the correct one. Okay. So these are all causes of what would cause AD to shift to the right. So which of these four things would cause AD to shift to the right? Let's go through them. Would an increase in spending on imports cause AD to shift to the right? No, that would cause AD to shift to the left, because imports take away from AD. So remember, it's C plus I plus G plus X, but then it's minus M. It's minus imports. So that's wrong. Right, the second one, the budget surplus increases. Right, all that means is for the government to have an increase in their budget surplus, it means they must be spending less and getting more in from tax. And if they're doing that, that's going to cause AD to go to the left. So again, that's wrong as well. Right. So the next one is confusingly written, but you can understand it. The current account deficit on the balance of payments decreases. So we're in deficit, which means we're importing more than we're exporting. I need to get better at handwriting. That's better. We're importing more than we're exporting, right? So if that decreases, that means we're suddenly not importing as much as we were, and we're exporting a little bit more. So our current account deficit has got slightly better. And if that happens, that means AD must be going to the right, because we're not importing as much, and we're exporting more. So that would make AD go up. So we've got this one as being right. The next one, consumer confidence improves. That would also cause AD to go to the right. So already, we've crossed out A and B. They're irrelevant. Now we're just going between C and D. Right, which of these things are going to cause the short-run aggregate supply to shift to the left? We know that the factors that affect short-run aggregate supply are firms' cost of production. So will either of these things affect a firm's cost of production? Right, the first one, the price of imports rising. If imports rise, firms might buy their raw materials from abroad, so that would increase their cost of production. So that's right. Secondly, firms have to pay the VAT first before passing it on to consumers. So if VAT goes up, that increases the firm's cost of production, which means the short-run aggregate supply would go to the left. So that's right as well. So it's now down to the last two. Okay. What's going to cause the long-run aggregate supply curve to shift to the right? Remember, the things that affect that is Q squared cell. So anything that affects the quantity or quality of capital, enterprise, land or labour. So what we've got here is the size of working population increasing. That would increase the quantity of labour. So that's right. Now wages falling. If wages fall, that would actually affect the short-run aggregate supply curve. Because remember, if wages fall, firms will increase their supply in the short run. It's got nothing to do with long-run aggregate supply. So that one is wrong. So the answer is C. On to the next one. It's saying the UK is in recession with price deflation. So deflation is when a sustained decrease in the general price level. So instead of it being a sustained increase, it's a sustained decrease. So there's a recession with price deflation and rising unemployment. Okay, get rid of that, all other things being equal. Which one of the following policies would be most appropriate in these circumstances? Right, so we're in recession, and there's loads of unemployment. What are we going to be wanting to do? We're going to be wanting AD to go up, let's face it. That's the only thing that would make sense. Because we're in recession, we want to try and get out of it. So would lower interest rates be a good idea? I think they would be. So that makes sense. So we'll tick lower interest rates there. So that'll make AD go up. Again, that would be good, again, lower interest rates. For C, high government spending, that'd be a good idea. And D, high government spending, it'd be a good idea. So all four are still in the way, okay? Right, would a high budget deficit be a good idea? Yes, it would, because if we're in more of a deficit, we must be spending more. So we'll put a tick there. If we expand the money supply, if people have got more money, they're more likely to buy stuff. So that, again, would increase AD. Right, now this is where it starts going wrong. C, they put higher taxes. That would make AD go down, so that's wrong. And this one, D, is wrong as well, because they put higher interest rates. So now we can cross out C, we can cross out D without even looking at any more, and it's between A and B. And now it's between a depreciation and an appreciation of the pound. Let's do depreciation first. I'll just write WIDEC. Is that going to be good or bad for AD? That is going to increase AD because exports are cheap, so we're going to be selling more things abroad. So the answer is A, and B is wrong. There we are. Okay, on to the next one. To be honest, I really, really like those questions because you just tick along, and it becomes very obvious very quickly which one's wrong. Right, question number 6. Cross off all of the things being equal. Pointless. Which of the following changes is most likely to increase AD in the short run and increase aggregate supply in the long run? Okay, so it needs to be To increase AD in the short run, it needs to be something that affects C plus I plus G plus X minus M. And to increase aggregate supply in the long run, it has to be something to do with Q squared cell. So we've got to see if any of these ones do both those things. Right, is AD likely to increase if people have got unemployment benefits? I think it is. However, if we give people more benefits, it means less people are probably going to likely to work, so there's no need to work. So it will probably actually not be good for the aggregate supply in the long run. So I'm going to cross that one off. Right, imports of capital goods. It's an import, so that would mean that would be bad for AD, so that's wrong. Right, a tax, that's going to make AD go down. So that doesn't make any sense if you think. It wouldn't increase AD in the short run, and also it would be bad for supply in the long run, so that's stupid. The last one makes sense because there's government spending, so that would increase AD because it's this part of C plus I plus G plus X minus M. And then finally, it's education, which would improve the quality of labour. So it does both those things you want. So the answer is D. Right, question number 7, a nice easy one. As you can see, they're using that long run aggregate supply thing, which is a straight line. And it's saying, which of the following policies is going to shift a long run aggregate supply to the right, whilst allowing the government to reduce its budget deficit in the short run? So the policy we need is one that will increase Q squared cell, but the problem is it can't cost any money in the short run. So, can A be right? A is right in one way because it says there's education and training, which would improve Q squared cell, so that's good. But the problem is it's increasing government expenditure, and they're saying they want to reduce their budget deficit, so that's wrong. Okay? Reducing corporation tax. If they have less tax in, they're going to be in more deficit. So already that can't work. Right, reducing unemployment benefits. The first thing that works on is it means that we'll have to spend less. That's good for our budget deficit. The second good thing is, if people have got benefits, what they're going to want, if people aren't getting benefits, there's going to be an increasing quantity of people wanting to work because they haven't got any money, so they need to have a job. So that would be good. So the answer is C. D is wrong because increasing subsidies costs money. So there we are. The answer is C. Right, there was a time when even Mr. Robinson hated these questions. Like when I was younger, and I'd like throw a strop with my mum because I'd be like, "Mum, there's at least 3 of these which are right." But now, after many years of speaking to my mum about this, I think I've got it now. Like I know it's hard, but you've got to do loads of them. You just got to get used to these maths ones. And now I can confidently say I know what I'm talking about. Okay. So from the data, it can be concluded that now they've got things. They've talked about real, and they've talked about GDP per capita. So what does real mean? That means they've taken into account inflation. GDP, you know what that is. And per capita, that is per person. Okay, so for this one, I've just managed to, I did the calculations in my head to make it easier. I got my calculator out in the end because I'm not that good at maths. So, starting off with population, how much has the population increased by? I tried to find out what it was, so I did. It's gone up by 2, and its original was 20. When I times that by 100, that meant that it's gone up by 10%. To find a percentage change, you do difference over the original times by 100. And then this is where some people will go wrong. GDP's gone up by 20, so loads of people think, oh, it's gone up by 20%. But its original number was 200, so it would be 20 over 200, not 20 over 100, which is 10% as well. And finally, the price index has gone up from 100 to 110, so that's 10 over 100, and that is also 10%. So all these 3 things have gone up by, have gone up by 10%. So what can we conclude from the data about real GDP per capita? Let's just pretend we were only talking about real GDP to start off with. What's happened to real GDP? Well, GDP's gone up by 10%, but when you take into account the price index, which has also gone up by 10%, you can argue at the minute GDP, or real GDP, has actually stayed the same, because both GDP and the price index have gone up by 10%, so real GDP is at 0, it hasn't changed. But we're now talking about real GDP per capita. So at the same time as real GDP staying the same, per capita, the population has gotten up by 10%. So actually, each person has got less GDP. So the answer is GDP per capita has fallen. I think a lot of people might have put B, but when you actually go through all those things I've just said, I think it makes sense. Come see me if what I just said didn't make any sense. Okay, question number 9 is get rid of all other things being equal, as usual. There's no point to it. And then it says, an increase in the exchange rate of the pound. I love it when it says that, because I know I can just write spiced. And I feel confident I'm going to know what I'm talking about. Okay? An increase in the exchange rate of the pound against other currencies is most likely to cause an increase in the UK's. Is it going to cause an increase in the surplus on our current account? I don't think it is, because exports are dear. So that means it would actually cause a deficit on the current account. So I think that's wrong. Right, is it going to increase the price of imported goods? No, because if you can see, imports are now cheap, so that's wrong. Is it going to increase the level of unemployment? That's the right idea, because with exports dear, AD is going to go down, so there'll be a reduction in cyclical employment, although there's going to be an increase in cyclical unemployment. So it's wrong, it's C. And D, the rate of economic growth, that's going to go down potentially because exports are dear, AD is going down, so it's not going to be good for our economy. So the answer is C. Okay, 10. The position of the vertical long run aggregate supply curve is determined by. The answer is just the level of productivity in the economy. All the other ones are they're just not right. What else can I say to you? So as an economy gets more productive, the long run aggregate supply curve goes to the right. Right, moving on. Now, this one required a call to my mum as usual. I said, Mum, it seems to be talking about an accelerator process, but doesn't that just go upwards? And she said, Innes, you've done it again, you got it wrong. It goes both ways. So I thought, thank you, Mum. I am going to explain this to my class and they'll be very happy. And the good thing is, now the answer is C, the accelerator process. Now we know the accelerator process goes both ways. When you're doing a question on accelerator, a question on AD going down for a 25 marker, you can still talk about the accelerator and you can still talk about the multiplier, but you've got to call it a downwards multiplier or a downwards accelerator. An interesting little tidbit she said to me, she said that in the last recession, GDP went down by 2%, but investment went down by 20%. So that was a big example of the accelerator process. You could use that bad boy in the exam, imagine you saying that in the exam. Anyway, moving on. Right, whenever you see an AD line going like this, your first thing to look at is which way is it going. So we've got AD going to the right, so we know AD is going up. Okay. What's most likely to make AD go to the right? You've got to get these ones right, guys. You have to, right? Now here, they've screwed you slightly with a word. It's a decrease. So is a decrease in the cost of importing goods going to be good for AD? No, that's going to make AD go left because we'd buy more imported goods, right? A decrease in the price of houses? That's wrong as well, because if prices go down, people feel less wealthy. And if they feel less wealthy, they're less likely to buy stuff. Right, a decrease in the exchange rate, we've got WIDEC, imports dear, exports cheap, and that obviously makes exports go up, so therefore AD would go up, so the answer is C. And if there was a decrease in the government's budget deficit, that means they must not be spending any money, because they're getting out of debt, so they're not spending anything, which would make AD go to the left, so the answer is C. Right, question number 13, the answer is B, people who are economically active. Just to go through it, you could be a population of the working age, but you could be disabled, so you're not able to work. So that can't be counted as being unemployed, so that's wrong. It can't be total population, because you're talking about like children and things like that. And it can't be D, because population not claiming benefits. You can actually be unemployed and not claim benefits, because your family could be so well off that actually you don't need to claim benefits, or you might not want to claim benefits. So that doesn't make any sense. So the only thing is, you've got to be economically active, and that's B. Okay, another easy one, question number 14. We've got AD and 2 long-run AS curves. Alright, get rid of all other things being equal. There's been a rightward shift in the LRAS. We know this can only be anything to do with Q squared cell. So any of these make sense for Q squared cell. Fall in the price level? No. Rise in productivity? That makes sense. Fall in unemployment? That would affect AD. Rise in exports would affect AD. So the only answer can be B. Because when there's an increase in labour productivity, the quality of labour improves, therefore there's more stuff being made. So the answer is B. Right, question number 15. It's too easy. Initial change in expenditure, remember that could be any initial change in AD, it's another way of saying it, leads to a large impact on national income. We know that is the multiplier effect. We don't even have to look at the other ones. Okay, it's just another way of saying something very, very simple. It says a country has a surplus on the current accounts and the balance of payments. So that means they're exporting more than they're importing. And how could they increase this? That means they'd have to export even more. So there's anything that would increase exports and reduce imports. Right, if the country exchange rate appreciated, spiced, would that do it? It would be imports would be cheaper, exports would be dear. So it would actually go the wrong way. So that's wrong. Right, productivity growth relative to other countries. If we become more productive, that means our goods are going to be more competitive. Therefore, they're more likely to have exports. So that's the right answer. Right, domestic consumption rises. That's got no real relevance because it's to do with domestic consumption. And if anything, if there's more people spending money in the UK, either way, it's wrong. It's just got nothing to do with it. And then D, the domestic rate of inflation is higher than other countries. If that was the case, if our domestic rate of inflation was higher, our goods would be less competitive, so it would go the wrong way. So the answer is B. Right, question number 17. It's another mathsy one. And am I going to have a shocker explaining this? Let's see, okay? So they've got two indicators. They've got CPI, which is to do with inflation. And they've got average earnings, okay? So how much people are earning. So average earnings, they go up by 3%, then by another 2.7%, then by 0.2%, then by another 1%. Right? Inflation goes up throughout the whole period. You could argue in 2008 it only goes up at a slower rate, but it's going up the whole time. So anyway, question part A, let's go through which ones make sense. The nominal value. Nominal value means inflation has not been taken into account. I'm writing it out for some reason. Don't go away. Right, okay, so nominal means not taken into account, real means it has been. Okay, so for this one, we only have to look at this box. Was earnings lower in 2012 than in 2003? No, because they went up by 3% here, then they went up by another 2%, then by another 0.2%, then by another 1%, so they kept on going up. They might have gone up at a slower rate at certain times, but they kept on going up, so that is wrong. Right, prices and average earnings were higher in 2012 than in 2003. Price and average earnings were higher in 2012 than 2003. So average earnings go up the whole way through, so that makes sense for that one. Whoops. Also, prices go up the whole way through. They go up by 2.5% first, then by 2.6%, then by 0.6%, then by 3.4%. So the whole way through they're going up. So again, they're higher in 2012 than they were in 2003. So B is the right answer. But let's see why C and D are wrong. Right, the real value, which means average earnings taking into account inflation, have declined each year. So here, let's give an example. Average earnings went up by 3%, but inflation only went up by 2%. So that year, in real terms, average earnings went up by 0.5% and they went up. So that's rubbish. They haven't declined each year. It's wrong. And then D, prices fell between 2005 and 2008. Some people think this because they think, oh, it was 2.6%, then only 0.6%, then 3.4%. But it's percentage change, so it's gone up by. CPI has gone up by 2.6%, then it went up by another 0.6%, then it went up by another 3.4%. For them to fall, it would have had to go minus 2.6, minus something else. So that's wrong. The answer is B. Okay, question number 18. Which of the following statements relating to the use of monetary policy is true? Now, lots of you don't know this because we never really talked about it. But let's see. It's talking about the UK monetary policy, right? Is the base rate set by the government? We know that's not true. It's set by the Bank of England. So that's definitely wrong. Right, B was the one I was a little bit not sure about. But I know what I'm right now. So the target rate for inflation is set by the Bank of England. That's not true. The government set the target and then the Bank of England have to try and get to that target. So that's wrong. Right, C we know is right. The Monetary Policy Committee can influence the money supply. That's what they do. And then D, the government has no control of the activities of the banking sector. That's rubbish. They could do loads of stuff. So the answer is C. Question number 19. We are now on to another one of those mathsy ones. But remember, you've got to try and see which of these answers can actually be seen from the data. So the data is talking about real GDP per capita. So again, that's real means it's taken into account inflation, and per capita means per person. Okay, can we see that the standard of living was lower in 2011 than 2008? Now, GDP does show standard of living, especially per capita. So, in 2011, all these things have gone down since 2008. So I would say that you could actually say the standard of living was lower in that year. That one's the most, I don't like that one, but that's the most likely to be right. All the other ones are definitely wrong, so it is right. B, average level of real GDP per capita declined between 2010 and 2011. This doesn't have anything to do with average rate. It's all to do with percentage change. So, it's rubbish. Okay. Rate of inflation declined after 2009. That's wrong. And because this question doesn't have anything to do with the inflation rate, it didn't tell you anything about the inflation rate, so it's got to be wrong. And then D, the rate of population growth varied between 2007 and 2011. At no point during this whole thing does it say anything about what's going on with the population. I know it takes into account per capita, but this data doesn't tell you anything about the population, so how would you be able to tell that? So the answer is A. And the final one on here, right, supply side shock. We never really talked about this as that much, but a supply side shock is something unexpected that's going to affect supply. Okay, so economic downturn in the UK economy, that would be called a demand side shock because it affects demand. Because if there's a downturn in the US economy, we're going to be able to export less, so that would make demand go down in our UK. Right, falling employment in the UK economy, that again would be a demand side thing. Rising oil prices though, that would affect a firm's cost of production, so it would affect supply, so the answer is C. And then D again, a rise in tax rates on household incomes would affect demand, so the answer is C. Okay, 5 more to go. I've lost the will to live, but let's push on. Okay, 21. Data on the growth of real GDP per capita is used to measure changes in the economies. Now, we know the answer is living standards. That is what GDP is done for. Now, when you get to year 13, you'll learn that GDP per capita doesn't always mean, high GDP doesn't always mean people are happier. For example, I'm really happy, I think, and I have no money, whereas my friend Matt has got loads of money and he doesn't seem that happy. But in economics terms, we see that the higher real GDP, the more likely you're going to have a better living standards. So the answer is A. But anyway, does it show the rate of inflation? No, CPI shows the rate of inflation. Does GDP per capita show population? It has population included in it, but doesn't directly show population. And finally, does it show the distribution of income, which basically means who has what, who's rich versus who's poor, and how much of the money is more towards the rich people than the poor people. And that's got nothing to do, I mean, how would you be able to tell that from that? So the answer's wrong. Okay, 22. I had a discussion with my mum about this one. And once again, she was right, I was wrong. I live with that fact. So anyway, 22, cross it out. Which one of the following is an example of a demand-side shock? We think this question would never be allowed in the exam because 2 of the answers could potentially be right. One of them, which I thought was right, was wrong. So anyway, question A is actually wrong. And I know there's a few shocked noises when you heard that. The reason is VAT. Who pays VAT first? Is it the consumer or the producer? It's actually the producer. So it actually affects supply first. It's a supply factor, so that's wrong. The other one that's definitely wrong is D, because food crops due to storms and flooding is definitely a supply shock. So we have 2 options: a 20% increase in the price of imports and a 25% increase in the size of the government's budget deficit. And we thought to ourselves, what? Our decision was a 20% increase in the price of imports would affect a firm's cost of raw materials, so therefore it's a supply side one. I know you're going to want to argue something else, but just stick with me. Whereas C's right, because a demand side shock is something that's affected demand that wasn't expected. And if the budget deficit increases, that means they're not going to be able to spend much. That's a big effect to demand if there's a big increase in the size of the government's budget deficit. Because what's going to happen, if there's been a 20% increase in the size of the government's deficit, they must have suddenly spent loads of money, and that would be a demand side shock. So the answer is C. You can argue with me about that some other point. I don't know any other answers. It's C. Okay. But I genuinely believe, by the way, that question would never make it to the final exam. No chance. Right, 23. Which of the following is most likely to lead to an improvement in the balance of payments on the current account? For it to improve, exports would have to go up and imports would have to go down. So we need anything like that. If there was a rise in the rate of inflation, in the UK compared to our trading partners, that'd be bad for us. So that's wrong, because obviously our exports would look more expensive, so no one would buy them. Right, a rise in the value of the pound. We just write spiced as per usual, and we know exports are dear, so that's stupid again. A rise in the rate of growth in labour productivity. Right, if we do that, we become more competitive, and if we become more competitive, we're more likely to be able to buy stuff. Sell stuff abroad for a better price. So people are more likely going to want to buy our stuff. So the answer is C. D, a rise in interest rates. First of all, you can say that doesn't make a difference, because a rise in interest rates would reduce AD in the UK. I think, personally, I could see why some people might say that would be the answer. It's not, but because, if interest rates went up, what would happen? The pound sometimes gets stronger when interest rates go up, which would mean imports would be cheap, which would mean, then it'd be bad for our current account. Great, there we are. So a rise in interest rates is wrong, because if there's a rise in interest rates, sometimes people say a rise in interest makes strong pound, imports cheap, exports dear. It makes the pound stronger, and imports would become cheap, which would actually be bad for our economy. So the answer is C. Just to be annoying, arguably, I think if interest rates rose, that means there'd be less demand in the UK, which means they might buy less imports, which would be good for our current account. So I'm not that happy with that one. I'm going to then once again call my mum, but the answer is definitely C. Just D was arguably right, but it's definitely C. We've made it. It's the last two questions. I'm bored. You're bored. But you're going to get through these last two, okay? So, 24 tried to bamboozle you with words. They thought, how can we scare these people? The easiest way, I know, we'll put loads of words. So, who cares about that? No one. Is reduce interest. So basically, all of this rubbish, everything they're saying here is that there's been a cut in corporation tax. You read it, but then you realise it means absolutely nothing. It's pointless. So there's been a cut in corporation tax. What's going to happen? Are people less likely to invest? No, they're more likely to invest. That's wrong. Is it going to have any effect on the exchange rate? No, it's pointless. I don't know why they've even put that. Is it going to increase unemployment? No, I think it would decrease unemployment, because if there's a cut in corporation tax, firms have more money, they're going to invest more, therefore they'll need more workers. So that's rubbish. And is it going to increase the rate of potential growth? Yes, it is, because if corporation tax goes down, like I said before, firms have got more money, so they're going to invest more, which would make our economy grow. Let's do a little rubbish diagram for you. There we are. Never, by the way, never do a diagram like this in your essays, ever. Ever. You need to label it with dotted lines. Right, 25. A government wishes to shift its focus away from increasing short-run growth to increasing long-run growth. So, it needs to be basically anything that increases long-run growth that makes sense. Okay, let's go through them. A reduction in job seekers' allowance, fine. And an increase in government spending on vocational training courses. Right, I want to say yes to that. Right, let's see what else. Let's see what else there is. Reduction in spending on road building is stupid, so that's not going to increase the long-run growth. Reduction in corporation tax might do the first part, but increased taxes on production would stop people producing, so that's wrong. Increasing subsidies would work on one side, but a cut in grants wouldn't work. So that looked like a scary question, but it's not. The answer's A. Because a reduction in job seekers' allowance means they're not trying to get AD going up, so they're not worried about short-run AS. But an increase in government spending on vocational courses would make the long-run AS go outwards. Diane, we have finished the video. I hope that was useful. I'm probably gonna make another 4 or 5 videos before your exams. Use them all, and that's about it.